the discussion tonight. I am Morgan, a member of the Syllabi Book Club cohort, and this is...
I am, okay. And I'm Nicole Carter, a member of the Syllabi Cohort as well. And we will be discussing some great things today. The last section of Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler.
Mm-hmm. So, let me forget the chapter that we're starting with. Is it chapter 20?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're starting with 20. Yeah, so do you have any initial thoughts that you want to kick off with? I'm gonna really be like referring to the syllabus. For anyone who hasn't already gotten it, still not too late to go ahead and purchase the syllabus on smartbrowngirl.com. Definitely a really helpful reading guide for Parable of the Sower. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess my initial thoughts are I guess just like the rest of the chapters are deeply connected to many of the things that are going on today. And so it was an important read for me. But I'm also I'm also in this space where I'm reflecting on my own spirituality in a lot of ways. And so it was very timely as well. So I'm excited about going ahead and starting this conversation and diving deep into the first chapter. And really, I'm interested in folks' thoughts on the relationship between Lauren and Bankole. I believe that's how it's pronounced. So what are your thoughts?
Let me make sure we are also live on YouTube.
Okay.
I think we are.
We are?
I think so.
I can look on.
Can you see?
Yep, we're on there.
Okay, good. I'm really interested in just how we're continuing the conversation from when CJ and I were talking on Monday. We were just kind of going through the sections and speaking about how Lauren has really evolved as a character throughout the book. And as you said, Parable of the Sower has always been a very relevant read, but just more so in this current social climate, political climate, especially with, even with like the debate coming up tonight. Like, it's just all these emotions. So reading this is almost like, okay, I'm reading this so that I can prepare for what's about to happen. So I had to reread these chapters, I think yesterday, just to refresh my memory. But there's a lot, and the book has a very interesting ending. And I also appreciate the Q&A section at the end of the book. I think that's what it is. It's kind of like what is it? Yeah, there's a conversation with Octavia Butler that really helped with, I guess, tying it all together.
Yeah.
So
I know I read several reviews and interviews with her about particularly Lauren's character. And we'll get to it, but Lauren's hyper empathy, and she didn't really appreciate people's interpretation of it. So I'm interested to see how people react to that or respond to the questions related to that. But it's also, and she's also interesting to me as well, knowing her age, but just how forward thinking she is for her age, especially as someone who teaches college students. I'm like, oh, okay. Because she's thinking through things that, you know, I think through, but not necessarily all of the students that I encounter every day. So it's definitely interesting. Yeah.
So you said that you really want to talk about Lauren's like relationship with, I'll just say, Bankole as well.
Yeah.
And that's actually the first question on the syllabus for chapter 20. What is Lauren's initial impression of Bankole, and how does this impression change over time, if at all?
Yeah. I think for me, it's so there were obviously some concerns with like age and things like that. But more than that, like my concern with their relationship was the lack of trust between both of them. For her, I think obviously so, because it was like he was feeding her this like dream of having this space somewhere, like this, you know, like place, a safe space, if you will. And then obviously it ultimately came out to not be true, or not exist in the way that he said it existed, for obvious reasons. But then like just to me, it just reminded me of like, and not to generalize about all men, but like like just the questioning of her thought processes and her ability to think critically. Like he questioned that at several points, and it pissed me off. Just like, sis has obviously thought through these things, so right. But
so how do you think that like, because you know Lauren is very like anti marriage.
So it's
yeah, she's very like anti-marriage and children. So how do you think that her relationship with him, I guess, like, do you think it shifted that her desires, or I guess lack of desire or whatever, if that makes sense?
So I actually feel like she at times kind of sort of went back and forth a little bit. But I ultimately still feel like she held strong. Like her ultimate goal was establishing this community, and growing this community. And she stuck to that. She also like stuck to her belief systems. So I think part of it is sort of like accepting certain things, or accommodating certain thought systems of thought, to get to the next place. And I think that's what happened with her. And we see that through those final chapters in the book, just sort of like navigating her way to a space that, I mean, because this was actually part one. There's another part, well, other parts to this book too. So like,
yeah,
but like that, it was just sort of her way of like negotiating, to get to like her ultimate goal of Earthseed. So, but yeah. So, what do you think?
It was just creepy. Their relationship was just like, I think, but you know, you brought up the age thing, and we kind of talked about that the other day, forgetting how old the characters were. We were talking about it in relationship to Keith being like 13, and Lauren having her first sexual experience when she was 12, and only being like 16, 17, like within the time of the novel. So it's just like thinking about how old is this man? He's like
53, I think he was.
Yeah. So, and then you know she's feeling him like in some way. She's So I think it was just kind of, and their relationship was just weird. And I had to keep being like, Lauren is a child. She's really young, and while she does have a very amazing ability to think kind of like beyond her years. She's very intelligent. She's still 16, 17, maybe even 18 years old. This man is old enough to be her father, if not her grandfather.
Yeah.
And I think that was just like, that was bothering me. Because I was like, this is weird.
So I also think, so we do have a comment, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if you see it. Oh, from YouTube, from Priska. But I'll just say really quickly, I do think for me, that relationship was representative. It was like kind of symbolic, not trying to think too outside of the box, but like kind of symbolic in that perhaps he represented patriarchy, if you will. And so women, like, often kind of sometimes starting in high school to this point, began to analyze that if they're introduced to it early enough, introduced to like kind of like it being this problematic thing. And if you look at him as representing that or a symbol of patriarchy, like I still feel like the relationship is awkward and the age difference is problematic. But patriarchy is like older than, right? It's deeply embedded within the foundation of at least like Western society. And so, and women have been like, regardless of age, been fighting against it. Young women, teenagers, older women. And so I think for me, if you look at it as that, I think she like stood her ground, even though like trying to manage along the way, like abiding by certain societal ideals, new ones too, because right, society was changing. So,
and it was also kind of funny to me how he was a distraction to her in the same way that Harry and I'm forgetting her, the other girl that they were with, but when they started to kind of eyeball each other, and she was like, she was kind of scolding them and not really. She was upset with them for being distracted by like a love affair of some sort.
Yeah.
But, now she has her own going on. Right. She's like, she's trying to fight it or whatever. But I was just like, girl, this is you were just getting on Harry about this, and now. But yeah, we have a few comments. That Prisa, whenever she interacted with that guy, I was always aware of his age. It really creeped me out. He was so stuck in his ways. And then she also said that she feels like Lauren's desire shifted when she realized that the main goal was going to be achieved. And she thinks Lauren ultimately needed a safe space in order to think about marriage. Yeah.
I mean, I think that also want to say that Lauren could be a hypocrite at times.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Harry and Zara.
That's the name.
Yeah.
So I think that is, Lauren is she can be very hypocritical, and she's very not pretentious, but just like she has like an arrogance about her that's
like an arrogance, but it's sort of like this naive side as well. So it's like and also like a hubris, so like this super prideful view of herself and ideas. But I also think if we're thinking about age, like when I think back to when I was 18, like that's probably who I was. Like I was stuck in my own, like my ideas were my ideas and they were right, and I was going to follow through with them, and there was nothing that someone else could do, right, to change those things. And I was going to try to like also because of her past and her experiences, I think she saw certain individuals as like a means of getting the things that she wanted.
Yeah.
So, and I think young women who have had problematic experiences, like familial experiences, experience death, and things like all these different things, hold on to what they can to try to get what they can sometimes. And so, I don't know, I saw that as, yeah. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, she is like older than what she seems, but she's still holding on to some of those age-based, I guess, stereotypes of teenagers.
Someone said, I don't think Laura was pressed to be married. I think she was pressed to survive.
Yep.
And then I count her, to her age. She was mature for age. She's still a teenager. Yeah. I think that's really what you were getting at, too. A lot of her thinking was influenced by her father being a pastor. Although she tried to be different from him, you can tell the way she was leading was in her blood from being a preacher's kid. I was actually thinking about this the other day because, like, even, she's creating Earthseed and everything, but, like, sometimes those church teachings and the, like, Baptist or just really, like, Southern, I guess you could say, Christian denominations is firmly rooted. So even as she's trying to, like, go another way, it's still, like,
deeply. Yeah. It's like you can't, it's like it's so ingrained that you can preach something else and say something else, but you still hold on to certain, sometimes unconscious perspectives and beliefs and practices. So, yeah.
So, next question is, how do care and trust appear as dangerous vulnerabilities within the group? It's a good one.
I would say, and this is why I say, like, this book, like, is, like, very telling of, like, things today and just experiences of, like, for me, for, like, Black women today. So even though it is, like, considered this, like, mythical, or idealist type of futuristic book, it is still like our reality a lot of times, and it's sort of like it's very difficult for so many of us, including those within the community, to open up and to be vulnerable because it can be used against you at any moment. And so, yeah. It's like you try to be different, but the reality is that you've experienced all these negative things. And it's like, how do you move past that? And so, like, to be vulnerable is to take a risk. And in the world that they're in, a risk is not worth it at times. So,
yeah, I think as it pertains to, like, to care and caring for each other, it's interesting to think about how that would even exist in such a contentious, anxious moment, when they're literally just trying to survive. And they're, especially, with Lauren being as headstrong as she is, like, what does care look like? Because it might not be tender care or soft care, but how is she possibly, like, or is she showing care for those around her just in a way that's not really gentle, I guess?
Well, and I feel like in their state, like, gentle care is not what's needed.
Right.
Like
Right.
gentle care, like what's needed is like this, like this is what we got to do, and we have to vet you in order for you to come in. But then sometimes she didn't do that, and I think that's what one of the comments was saying. Like she, like all these people just kept coming in, and it kept reminding me of, now I can't think of the show. What is the show, like the apocalyptic show?
Walking Dead.
I'm sorry.
The Walking Dead.
Yes, that's what it reminded me of. Like you keep letting these people in, and it's like they're taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
Or they can. Like the potential is there.
Yeah. Tamara says that. I think it was Tamara who says that every time they added new people, Lauren was letting her guard down, and she was being too trusting.
Yeah. That's why it reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like every time you did that, like in many movies like that, because it was like an apocalyptic type book, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's always a risk, and she like was very open at times, but then guarded at others. So yeah.
Let's see. She says Lauren was too trusting. The group was lucky that they were never double crossed. A big group can bring safety, but details and behavior that you notice in a small group can slip by in a big group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think so. I was just trying to see the comments because like they're halfway showing on my.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I think like even if you look at movements today, like I won't even say like political movements in terms of not political, but like political parties and groups like that, but like actual activist political groups. It's like it's very, very vulnerable. But it's like, and it's always a risk being part of those things because you could be taken advantage of, but it is necessary. That like allowing other people in is risky, but in order to survive and thrive and grow and create change for real, like you can't just always stick to your own ideas, and it can't just always be you. Like it has to be a collective.
So going off of that, what do you think? Because I don't know. What do you think care and what do you think care looks like in those spaces, in like social movement, political movement spaces, like within the collectives that is like say or organizing? How do you practice care effectively with your group, with your people, especially when there's like traumas and stressors from the things that you are working against?
So for me, it reminds me of like just various organizations that I'm part of, right? And care is not always nice. Care sometimes is like holding you accountable for something that you've done that's problematic, or right, or teaching you about the mannerisms that exist outside of this space, like your quote unquote safe space. So in thinking of that, because I keep thinking of like just history and movements throughout history and how they were created and how they educated like young people to come in, because if like for me, Lauren again is representative of those teenagers who were part of like stuff like SNCC and like all these different movements and had these ideas. But there were individuals within those groups who taught them like how to navigate the world around them and provided these circumstances or scenarios that were not always like happy go. Like,
Yeah.
because really these movements, and if you think about this community is not like this just happy-go-lucky place. So
Right.
it's not this like, oh, we just love everybody. But because the reality is they're trying to survive as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes survival care looks like, so I'm gonna need, like, for example, the conversation about teaching, and I can't, was it Tori? I can't remember the child's name,
Mm-hmm.
but like teaching him like how to shoot a gun, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like it is not always nice. And it's even like parents, like we obviously, I know there are circumstances where there are parents who are not always as caring as they could be, or authentic. But a lot of times in parental relationships, like care looks like, I'm about to teach you this lesson because if I don't teach it to you here, then you're gonna go out there and then you go act a fool or something's gonna happen to you, right? And that's the same thing that's happening. So I feel like this is that community as a group, but that I mean is an example of that. And so care is complex.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take one form or shape.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, like looking at caring as like an ethic and a way of like actively living versus just, oh, I care about you. Just a simple like one-off kind of thing. It's really interesting to think about it too, especially in terms of social movements like you brought up and survival, people actively trying to survive. So like, yeah. Okay, so it looks like Lauren and Bankole's relationship is a hot topic. So the next question is, how is Lauren's relationship to him connected to her past? I think you kind of touched on this when we were talking about it at first, just about how her previous relationship with men kind of, in a way, made her weary of him, but also made her, I guess, hopeful and really willing to trust. I think because in a way, a lot of her experiences with men have been generally negative. So she kind of went into this one almost like, I feel like she may have been expecting it to be negative, but also just had like a strong hope that it wouldn't be. And she invested a lot into it.
Yeah.
And she's also still like freshly, let me get my dates because that's one thing. We jump years, but I want to say, even if it's been a year or two, she's likely still really grieving her brother, grieving Keith's murder. So that the way their relationship was going, that kind of just skewed her view of a lot of things. So
getting close to people, like,
yeah,
you don't want to get close to someone. I mean, and that goes back to like, I guess, like trusting people and the risk of it, because like relationships, even individual or interpersonal relationships with one other person is a risk. So, and like our past shape how we interact with others, like moving forward. So we still we're hopeful, but we're like, like I'm not gonna put everything in it, and just in case something happens. Yeah.
So, kind of moving. Did you have anything else like immediate to add about their relationship?
No, I think the first couple of chapters, or the first section, just really talked about that and like this idea of trust and community. So,
what do you think? So the epigraph at the beginning of chapter 20 is, God is neither good nor evil, neither loving nor hating. God is power, God is change. We must find the rest of what we need within ourselves, in one another, in our destiny. And then I think I want to say chapter. I have to look at my notes. It's like chapter 20 or 21. She is telling Bankole about Earthseed, and there I would say there are themes of new life and hope, and kind of the things that are brought up in this epigraph. So, saying that to say, the next question is, how are the images of death and destruction that we see during this time in close proximity to this promise and new life that Lauren is anticipating with Earthseed?
So I think, well, I don't think this actually is the question that had me thinking the most out of like all of this, like all of the questions. And I think it's because to me, those 4 areas are deeply connected. So like this idea of, where's it at? The idea of death, destruction, newness, all these things. So like death and destruction lead to like something new.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
So even though it's the end of one thing, it's like a new existence. So and thinking about, so even like if we put it into the context of like COVID and everything like that, and the changes, right? Like it's the end of like a way of life or living. It's the destruction of a normal. And so now we have a new normal. So it's a newness, and we're learning how to exist and navigate the world. And it creates new opportunities for people as well. So it's not all bad, you know? It's just, what do you do with the lesson from it, I guess. And so I think one of the key themes is change, right? Like that's the only thing that is never going to change is that everything changes. Death is inevitable. Destruction is inevitable, but so is newness and innovation and change. So, and I think like for me, I see it as more than like just like in a kind of like religious view, but also like in saying God is change, right? Like for me, that because if we see God in everything that we do, then change is in everything. So it exists everywhere. It's inevitable. And so I don't know. Like that was the thing that I was like really focused on.
That question specifically.
You said what?
That question. You're saying you were really focused on that question?
Yeah, that question. Yeah.
I know there's
like, I'm probably gonna like write a whole blog post on this question. I know the inevitability of change.
The part where she tells him about, I think what she was calling like the essentials of Earthseed, and she was saying it's like learning to shape God, educating and supporting oneself and the community, and working to fulfill destiny. So when I read that part, it reminded me of that epigraph at the beginning of 20, because the end says, we must find the rest of what we need within ourselves and one another in our destiny. And that was, one of the excerpts from Earthseed. Then he responds to her and he's like, basically saying the Earthseed seems too simple and like that it's not like whimsical or enough or something. And he lost me at that point. He didn't really have me anyway, but I know before he was drawing up the similarities between Buddhism and Earthseed, and that reminds me of what you kind of goes back to what you were just saying about death and destruction and new life being tied, because those are principles that you find in really any belief system. You know, there has to be death in order to usher about the change. But I was just not sure what he was getting at when he was saying that it wasn't like mystical enough.
So I don't know, like for me, I also think that we live in a world that like wants to complicate everything when so many things are just like super simple. And like, so, and I feel like he, again, like for me, he's representing this like the world.
I mean,
like, yes, man, like who likes to complicate it. It has to be like a challenge. Because life's already a challenge, like because of the complexity and the ebb and flow. But it is also very simple in that, and this is just like my interpretation. It's also very simple in that we know it's going to be an ebb and flow. We know it's going to be difficult times and challenges, and we know that there are going to be times where it's like cool. And that's the guarantee. Like, I don't know. And I feel like, but for some people, it's just like, that's not good enough.
I think what you were saying about, you know, kind of looking at him as a symbol of the patriarchy becomes like, you have to, the way he's like, the way they dialogue. I think it's in chapter 21 when you really start to see the differences between them during their conversation about Earthseed. And I'm just like, this is a man. Like, he's representative of what you like the patriarchy. He's like mansplaining Earthseed.
Mansplaining. That's what it was.
Like, I was
trying to like interpret something that was already interpreted by her.
Yeah.
Like, you try to reinterpret it as something that is too simple or not deep enough for you.
It's also interesting because, like, sir, you're old, and she is. He's much older than her, and he's like really like grappling with these, like trying to really pick apart what she's working on at like 17, 18 years old. And it was just really crazy to me how, I guess, in this conversation, how mature she was. She was like, look, when I'm gone, Earthseed is going to transform, is going to grow, is going to change, because I'm not here anymore. There are different, you know, people involved in it, and the theology, I guess, is going to evolve. And he was like, well, you need to do this. You know, it doesn't make sense because it's not this. And it's just like, she just shows so much more. Like, she was just put together in a way, in that conversation, in a way that he wasn't. Not that I was.
Yeah. I don't know. And so again, like, to me, it's representative of like the world we live in that is stuck in like a particular viewpoint of things and unwilling to accept that things can be simple and just as is. Like, and again, like, because it's this young woman that's sharing these things with you, you don't believe her. So, like, it's almost like, what is she talking about, right? Like, so, and I think this is what happens, like, throughout, when people have experiences and they share their viewpoint on things and people question it and belittle them or minimize their view. So, yeah.
And it's also like, how can he, you know, even if that, you know, at this point their relationship isn't sexual, it's flirty and all, you know, they definitely have some romance, I guess you could say, between them. And it's like, he doesn't question that. Like, he doesn't really question that. They're kind of inching in and out of it, but he's not questioning that. He's questioning something, like a work of her mind. He's questioning some of her intellectual work. And it's just like, what a man. What a man.
like, I guess like the femininity, like, so for him, it's like her as a young woman is not to be questioned. His attraction, right? Their attraction. There are no questions about that. Maybe right in the beginning, but not really anymore. But like, don't say much because like you don't need to talk, right? Like the whole typical like seeing women as like just these really like sexual beings, no intellect whatsoever. Like they can't exist or intersect or exist simultaneously. But we know that they do. But like,
Yeah.
like it's just very symbolic of.
Mm.
And again, not trying to generalize, but of men. Like, so,
gotta say no.
yeah.
Priestess said, I wonder if he would have had more respect for Earthseed if it was coming from someone his age. Most likely. Yeah. Someone his age, and probably if it came from another man.
Yeah, because so even if you think about like him discussing his like his I think it was his sister, and he minimized her, right? Like so I don't think it matters like if like I think it is age and it's gender. So it has to be an older man sharing these thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was done with him. I was done with him when I realized he was old and they had sex. Yeah, at that point I was like, then they like, find some little secluded area and they have get a little blanket so they could. Does he know her age? I feel like it's, I can't granted, like I can't say. I bet Lauren looks like a child. Like I think, it's definitely evident that she's really young. But at any point has he been like, how old are you?
Well, he comments on her age. He does comment on like.
Is it before they have sex?
Like early on, I think he comments on her like being something like mature for her age.
Interesting. I feel like I remember that.
So he's just a creep,
Yeah, because I knew after they had sex, he kind of like, and she said she's 17 or 18. He's like, what? Huh? And it's like, I'm like, I thought you knew this.
Yeah. And I actually take that back. His sister was his little sister. So again, the age thing comes to play. Like he minimized her. Like he left her. So like.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like even if she didn't say her age before, he knew. Like the youngins think that young teen girls have a teen girl essence, like So
if Octavia Butler were alive, I would like ask her some questions.
And if she were alive, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
About so much, but definitely like when you were writing this man, what was going on? Like, what's up with him? Okay. Oh, this is a good one. How do the histories of slavery persist in the social relationships and upbringings of the group? Consider literacy, chattel, rape, and reproduction.
So I wrote out all these notes. Sorry, I keep looking.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
So to me, like I feel like it is a play on, and really not a play on it, because it's like sort of like how we know that legally slavery is not legal, but it exists in
Mhm.
multiple forms.
Mhm.
And also, like, slavery exists in the fact that we can be a slave to ideas, to, practices, to money, to
Mhm.
relationships, to like.
Yeah.
So I think it played out in that particular way. But I mean, there were some examples specifically of, like, for example, I wrote down Emery and Tori, and how Tori, well, they like lost their family.
Mhm.
They were separated, and well, really, is Emery was separated, and how that is specifically like what happened during slavery, like shadow slavery, like the actual legal institution of.
Yeah.
And so I think we see that happening today, with immigrant families being deported and being taken to spaces, centers where they are separated from their families. It's happening all over again.
Mhm.
Imprisonment of Black and brown women and men. Like, so that's just like 13th, like that
Yeah.
documentary, like
Yeah.
that's like the prison industrial complex. So prison is the new institution of slavery. It's
Mhm.
actually really not new. It's like it was the continuation of.
Mhm.
And so, but we see that now in some other ways, like the immigration thing.
Mhm.
But then also, I just think like the reality is that, like, for the most part, if we are not wealthy, we are very like, and even those who are wealthy and it's like new wealth or new money,
Mhm.
like they have to do all these things to maintain that
Yeah.
status.
Yeah.
And then some of us, if we're not wealthy, then we have to do all that we like. We working, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
I'm
But
like logged in. I work like 83 hours a week.
Mhm.
Like that is like, but it's because like I need that to survive.
Mhm.
Like to like not just survive, but also to thrive. Because isn't that the goal? But are you really thriving if you don't
Okay.
have time to do anything else but work?
Well,
So
I'm gonna
like,
ask you this question because you said surviving, so it made me think about when we're talking about care. So you specifically, how are you practicing care while you're trying to survive and thrive?
I go to therapy once a week. Like normalized therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I do,
No,
for
sorry.
real. And I create. And honestly, like reading stuff like this is like a form of care because it's like allowing me time to reflect, which I wouldn't have if I were just teaching classes or directing a center. So,
Mm-hmm.
but many people who like don't even have a concept of that, like I feel like that is like slavery is like you try to make time for care and fun and laugh out of like things that are not funny and things that are not happy moments because
Mm-hmm.
you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's deeply connected.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a deep question because I need to reflect on it a lot.
You said survive, and we were talking about survival and types of care, so it just made me think about like, how do we like practice care? Because I mean, we're all trying to survive, and then given the ways Black folks are being disproportionately affected by like everything right now, and all ways, like, but just with the backdrop of this pandemic, like, how are we? I think it's important that we try to practice like a tender care with ourselves and be very loving to ourselves. But it's like, what does that even look like? And
Yeah.
in doing so is such a privilege, and it takes so much time.
Yeah, someone said, like, in regards to care, I like how the group took rest days. Like, that is like, I feel like we forget to do that. Because it's like, if it's like FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, if I'm resting, I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that, or I'm missing out on this, or it's something that I'm not doing. And so you feel guilty for doing it. And I think it existed in these spaces too, but and this is why I say, like, these chapters really spoke to me, because it's like, Nicole, wake up, sis. Like, but yeah, care is, I feel like this is something that so it's like Audre Lorde talking about like care as self-preservation and political warfare, because it's like it's countering what we've been taught to do. Historically, we've been taught to like just work, because like this is what our ancestors have done. Like, this is what we know. You just got to work to survive. And care is seen as being lazy or not. Like, if you're doing something that's caring for yourself, then you're not caring for somebody else, or you're not taking care of business. And that's a problem. So.
So our time is almost up. So you okay with us jumping to the last question on the thing?
Sure. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. You're not even like.
You're right. How are the characters' sense of hope and despair colored by their past? So who we have? We got Lauren, Bankole, Harry.
So I don't know. Like, I think, I mean, Lauren demonstrates to me like that she has held on to the belief that she had like throughout, and her belief was in this community and building this community. And she saw hope in building that community even to the end, right? And so but I also know, like, I think for them, like, despair and hope existed simultaneously. Like, it wasn't one or the other. And so those things just shaped their experiences as they navigated this new world, or the change that they were experiencing. And I don't know, like, so I feel like their past taught them that the two exist simultaneously, or can exist simultaneously. But what do you think?
I have a hard time with this question. I think I'm thinking too hard. Because I think, like, at least with Lauren, I feel as though it's been I don't want to say an uphill journey, but it's almost as if she's dealing with these different traumas, and she has like these glimmers of hope along the way. And so I don't even know if she's completely hopeful. Like, I feel like she almost she loses a lot of hope. I think she knows that it's possible, but I don't know if she really believes that it's possible for her.
So do you think it's kind of like, so how some folks criticize, like sometimes like super religious people, right? Who like hold on to this like one viewpoint and thought, and always just go back to that one viewpoint and thought. But it's like deep down inside, like something is missing.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like because she keeps talking about like this whole like God has changed, God has changed, God has changed. I know God has changed, God has changed. Like
I know he's changed, but like, where is he? Because she even says in like, not in this section, but in earlier, I think it was in the last section that we talked about. She said something. She's like, I hate God. Like, God has changed. I hate God. So she like has that moment where she like completely like breaks, and she, that I think that kind of facade that she had been putting on, she couldn't keep it up anymore. But eventually she snaps out of it, and I feel like she's back on, like you said, God has changed, but she's still not 100% in agreement, or she doesn't really believe it all the way.
Yeah, I think that's for me, like, so in thinking about the past, how it shapes those things, it like makes her question it.
Mm-hmm.
She's like unsure, but that is the one thing that she has held to be true, and so she sticks to it, even if it's really not.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is what a lot of us do, not just like religiously, but in our lives. Like, we know certain things to be true, and so if those things to us are true, we're just gonna hold on to it, even if all these other things counter that viewpoint.
Yeah, because it's like it's a comfort, even if we are completely, even if we know it's BS, or it continues to be proven wrong. We find solace in certain ideas or things or people, and for whatever reason, we just continue to hold on to it, hoping that it'll make sense.
Yeah. I just feel like, so this wasn't a question, but how do you feel about the ending?
In terms of what?
Like, because it ended in this way, this sort of like, I'm going back to what I said, God has changed. We're going to plant this tree. We're going to name this community. And that's it.
I think so. The ending was very kind of like, I think when I finished, I was kind of like, what? It wasn't like the ending of a book that I felt was incomplete, but it definitely kind of upset me, because I was upset with Lauren. I've been consistently upset with Lauren because I just want her to have like this monumental growth, like this. Like, I just want her to be someone else almost, and I think that the ending just reminded me that, for one, there has to be a second book. I know there is, but I was just like, yeah, there has to be more, because it leaves so much to, there's so much that needs to happen, but in a way, it felt incomplete. I think.
Some I can't see the Facebook users' names, but
yeah, I can't.
Someone said they liked the ending. And then Priska said the ending was so unsatisfying.
I was just like, I was just like, huh? It was a very pretty ending, like very symbolic, and I guess, but it's like it all came together. But I'm like, no, there has to be more. I just went through too much with this girl for the last 20 however many chapters. There has to be something else.
Yeah. Oh, like,
But also, I think I need to like, especially with the main character being this young Black girl, I do want to like be happy that she had a very uneventful kind of closing. You know, there wasn't some traumatic event that, well, another traumatic event that happened right before the end of the book or anything like that. Like, it definitely seemed to be going in the direction of healing. And I think just in reading fiction, I think that part of me was like, no, where's the drama? But also thinking about it from the lens of like Black girlhood or something like that, it's satisfying to see that she had a very uneventful, that, it ended just kind of like, we're going somewhere. We're healing. There's care, that type of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe it goes back to like her whole, like, it's simple. She has these simple beliefs, and the ending is like a new beginning. And that was like one of the tenets of Earthseed was, right? Mm-hmm. Her destiny was founding, for her in her mind, was creating this community, and she did. That was it.
Yeah.
And like, so the book after that is Parable of the Talents.
I haven't read that.
It's supposed to be like 4 years after this takes place. So it's about the true foundation of Earthseed. So it's about her again.
You said 4 years after this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know if, because I know the last one was never published, right? I think. Because it was supposed to be like a trilogy, but I don't think the last one was ever.
Yes, it was supposed to be a trilogy.
Is there like any, like, are the manuscripts out there? Like, are there? I feel like Parable of the Talents, because I haven't read the whole thing. I read some of it in a class I took, but it just seems like it'd just be another like kind of roller coaster. And I think, what do you think is like, I guess, lost by not having that last book, if anything?
Let me see. Yeah, it keeps saying like the whole, like the two of them. Mm-hmm. But several of her books were like series. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
it'd be interesting to see like a film adaptation of this.
It would be.
But I'd want the right person's hands on it. And I need a few years before they do that. Right now. Not how we living it. But if you don't have any, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think this was a great conversation.
I enjoyed it.
Again, the book just had me really thinking. And I know she was 18, but I think as Black women of color, like, it can really help us to reflect on like our experiences and our realities.
Bye, Nicole. So yeah, guys, that's it. Thanks for joining. I'm sure like she just dropped off by accident, but thanks for joining. Thanks for commenting, and we will see you next time.